Ano ang tatlong pinaka-common and pinaka-famous na maling bintang sa pagkain ng taba? There are 3 common diseases or diagnosis sa mga tao ngayon na parating yung pagkain ng taba yung pinakonsider na primary suspect kung bakit nagkakaroon ng ganito. And we will discuss briefly kung bakit ito ay mali at kung ano yung katotohanan behind this. So the first one would be yung pagtaas ng ating bad cholesterol. So first, kailangan muna natin i-identify ano ba talaga yung bad cholesterol. So bad cholesterol is actually not just the elevated LDL, pero yung bad cholesterol na totoong bad talaga para sa ating health would be the triglycerides and also the VLDL or the very low density lipoprotein. Hindi lang yung LDL. LDL can also be bad, pero maraming klase ng LDL and it's the small, dense na LDL which is karamihan sa nakikita natin sa mga taong kumakain ng mga high carb foods, yung kumakain ng mga matatamis, yung kumakain ng carbohydrates. Those actually are the real bad cholesterol. At hindi ito dahil sa pagkain ng taba. As a hint, ito ay mostly seen kapag ang isang tao ay kumakain ng mga inflammatory foods. And that inflammatory foods, yes, it's not just the fats, but number one cause also ay yung pagtaas ng insulin sa katawan. So insulin as a hormone is the driver of production of these bad lipids. Kasi yung mga bad lipids na ito, hindi ito direktang nanggagaling sa ating pagkain, but it is actually created by our own body. Yung ating atay, yung ating liver, siya mismo yung gumagawa ng mga bad cholesterol na ito. Pero hindi ito gagawa ng kusa. Magkakaroon lang ng de novo lipogenesis o yung sariling paggawa ng taba ng ating katawan kapag merong nagdidikta dito. At alam niyo ba kung sino yung nagdidikta dito? Yung diktador po ng paggawa ng bad lipids, bad cholesterol is actually insulin. So, insulin is a hormone. Siya yung parang direktor na nagsasabi na ngayong araw, gagawa tayo ng taba at yung mga taba na kinain natin ay iimbakin natin. Hindi natin gagamitin as energy and that is the cause of build-up because fats inherently hindi yan masama sa ating katawan. Our body is made up of cholesterol in a large bulk. Yung mga cells natin, yung ating skin mismo, is also rich in cholesterol. Our cells sa ating katawan, we have trillions of cells sa ating katawan at kada cell niyan, meron yan tinatawag na lipid bilayer. It is actually composed of lipids, kaya hindi talaga masama yung taba. Nagiging masama lang ito kapag ito ay prone to oxidation, leading to inflammation, and of course, kapag ito ay nagbe-build up, kapag sobra-sobra yung level nito sa ating katawan nang hindi ginagamit. At hindi talaga yan magagamit kapag yung katawan natin ay also mataas din sa insulin because insulin is a fat burning blocker. Binablock niya yung pag-burn ng taba sa ating katawan. So again, yung pagtaas ng bad cholesterol is actually not because of direct increase in fat intake, but it is related to high insulin. At ano naman yung nakakapagpataas ng insulin? The elevation of insulin sa ating katawan is not caused by fat intake. Out of 3 macronutrients na common na pinagkukuhanan natin ng energy, fats, proteins, and carbohydrates, actually yung taba, siya yung may pinakamaliit na impact when it comes to insulin effect. And sa kanilang tatlo, yung pinakamataas naman na impact ng insulin is coming from carbohydrates, intake of sugar, and intake of other starch. So starch would include kamote, tinapay, kanin, biskwit, yung mga desserts, and mostly the root crops, and also marami pang grains. Corn, wheat products, all of those are starch. Oatmeal, meron akong kilalang bago lang. Farmer, sobrang hardworking, and yet biglang na-diagnosed with diabetes. Hindi niya ito maintindihan because every day 3 bowl ng oatmeal yung kinakain niya. At nung sinabihan nga siya, ang hirap maniwala. So, wala na tayong makikita pa dyan. But it's actually science telling us na starch converted into glucose will spike your insulin, at kapag nag-spike yung insulin, magkakaroon din ng fat buildup sa katawan, and that fat buildup will actually lead into production of too much fats in the body through de novo lipogenesis. And kapag marami na ng taba sa ating katawan with inflammation, it can also lead into insulin resistance that is also related sa diabetes at marami pang iba. So, that's number one. Maling bintang sa pagkain ng taba ay yung pagtaas ng blood cholesterol and lipids natin. Yung bad cholesterol na yan would include VLDL, triglycerides, or what we also call as the remnant cholesterol. Sila talaga yung direktang merong link with cardiovascular diseases. So, remnant cholesterol, just so alam nyo kung paano ito i-compute, it's that total cholesterol total cholesterol minus HDL minus LDL. At kapag mataas ito, like nasa 24 yung values, and you already have a very, very high risk of developing cardiovascular diseases. As much as possible, dapat below 14 lang ang ating remnant cholesterol sa katawan for us to be considered as low risk in cardiovascular diseases. Sa computation pa lang yan, sa mga mathematicians dyan and statisticians, you can already see how LDL, when increased together with high HDL, is actually protective of heart disease because ang ating remnant cholesterol or yung considered natin as risk factor for developing heart disease is computed. Yung formula niya is total cholesterol minus HDL minus LDL. Okay, so yan. And moving on to our second sa tatlong bintang ng pagkain ng taba would be the fatty liver. So, sabi nila, kapag meron kang fatty liver na sobrahan ka na sa pagkain ng taba, that may be true in some extent, but it is conditional. You can only have too much fat intake actually when you are also consuming it together with too much carbohydrates. Still the same pathophysiology. Kapag merong mataas na insulin yung ating katawan, then it will drive de novo lipogenesis production, at bago pa tumaas yung triglycerides sa ating dugo, it is mostly being already deposited in our liver. Sa ating atay mismo, doon na nade-deposit, which leads to fatty liver. Merong dalawang klaseng fatty liver. We have alcoholic fatty liver and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And the alcoholic fatty liver, of course, alam na natin, it's from intake of alcohol. But the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, akala natin, it's from intake of fats. But now we understand na hindi pala yun. It's actually the too much fructose intake, too much sugar intake, too much starch intake. That can still lead into production of triglycerides kapag hindi ito ginagamit at kapag ito ay sobra-sobra. So, for those na merong kilala or currently having fatty liver but have been avoiding intake of fats for so long at nagwa-wonder, they are actually confused. Bakit sa pag-iwas ko ng taba, hindi na ako kumakain ng lechon and steak and other fats? Bakit meron pa rin akong fatty liver? Try to look at your total carbohydrate and starch and sugar and fructose intake. Baka nasasobrahan din kayo. Although hindi ito common sa lahat, but if you are actually eating too much fruits, like 1 kilo, 2 kilos of fruits in a day, 5 saging sa isang araw, meron pang mangga, it can actually lead into fatty liver production because of too much fructose and glucose na nasa prutas na yan. Especially na dito sa Pilipinas, murang-mura, and it's almost even free if meron kang tanim nito. That's why it is very easy to overeat as well. But for the general public, hindi naman ganun ka-komplikado para sa kanila yung fruits, especially if they are taking it in portions, maliliit na serving lang, once a day, twice a day. But if you are consuming it, especially kumakain ka nito kasama ng other foods, like meron pang soft drinks, may tinapay pa, kumakain pa ng pinaypay o mga kakanin, then it can be too much glucose, fructose, and starch, leading into fatty liver. With or without fat intake, kung kumakain ka ng mga high-carb foods na ito, together with fats, then that is added insult sa injury. But marami actually na kahit pa hindi sila kumakain ng taba, but kumakain sila ng sobrang high carb foods, they can still have fatty liver. Pero on average, for people like me before discovering low carb, hindi ako nag-iisip, kumakain lang ako lahat. Yung tawag natin na seafood diet. I eat all the foods that I see. So that is not right. So most foods are already embedded with fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. And if we are not mindful, we are actually over consuming the foods that spikes our insulin. And spiking our insulin, high carb, high protein, and incidental fats. And already, kapag sobra-sobra yung kinakain natin, eating 3 times a day, 4 times a day, 5 times a day, that is already too much. At yan nga ay malaking bagay na when it comes to insult sa ating liver. And lastly, for our third na maling bintang sa pagkain ng taba would be the gallbladder diseases, specifically gallbladder stone. Kapag ang isang tao ay merong na-discover na gallbladder stone, number 1 na sinasabi, iwasan yung taba. Sinasabi na iwasan yung taba, meron naman yung point because kapag kumakain ka nga ng taba, nararamdaman ng mga taong merong gallbladder stones na sumasakit yung kanilang sikmura. It's like the stone is being mobilized, nagugulo siya at nag-result ito into colicky pain, masakit na dumarating and then nawawalan sakit sa tiyan. However, that may be effective as a symptomatic relief. Ibig sabihin, yung sakit ng tiyan ay nawawala o hindi nangyayari kapag hindi ka kumakain ng taba. But when it comes to root cause talaga ng problema, when it comes to ano ang kadahilanan kung bakit namuo yung cholesterol stone in the first place, it's actually the intake of very, very low-fat diet. Yes, there are studies already being published. No? These are scientific studies na yung mga taong very low-fat diet, malaki yung risk nila of developing cholesterol stone. At, at bakit nagkaroon ng ganito? In a simplest of explanation kung bakit ito nangyayari, yung bile natin na nasa loob ng ating gallbladder stone is actually namomobilize yan. Yung gallbladder natin ay sisiglan lang siya ng bile o yung apdo. And then, lalabas ito kapag kumakain tayo ng taba. And it's a normal process. In fact, eating fats is so natural na binigyan tayo ng Diyos ng gallbladder worth 30 cc or 30 ml of bile para matunaw yung taba na kinakain natin sa ating meal. And so that, para sa mga panahon na malaki yung intake natin ng fat intake, we are surely going to absorb them. Kasi meron na tayong reservoir, meron tayong reserve ng bile because bile is essential sa ating pagtunaw and pag-absorb ng taba sa ating pagkain para maipasok ito sa ating katawan. Yun pa lang, alam na natin that fats are really essential. Importante sila sa ating pagkain. However, because we were brainwashed for so long, going 50 years now of being brainwashed, tama ba? Yeah, by 1977 kasi yung standard American diet na pinablish yan, na pinomote nila yung low-fat diet. So actually, by 2027, magkakaroon na tayo ng 50 years of brainwashing na yung pagkain ng taba ay masama. Anyway, if you want to wake up at para ma-release na kayo sa brainwashing na yan, try to educate yourself more and welcome to our channel if it's your first time. And if it's not your first time, please help your family and loved ones be awakened as well. Share and also share your story and share this video to your timeline and to your family and friends para malaman din nila. Moving on, yung ating bile sa ating gallbladder would actually lead into production of cholesterol kapag ito ay magiging stagnant. Yung tawag nating bile stasis kapag ito ay hindi gumagalaw. At hindi ito gagalaw kapag yung pagkain natin ay wala rin sapat na taba because the intake of fats will actually be the one. Ito yung trigger of turnover, proper turnover ng taba sa ating katawan, turnover ng bile so that the bile will not form into stone. So this is why yung pagkain actually ng taba is protective. It is even going to prevent gallbladder stone formation. gallbladder stone formation in people who are eating high fatty foods. Fatty foods are because they are consuming it together with high carb food. So ano yung pinaka-common pagkain na high carb and high fats at the same time? So yung mga desserts. So chocolates, cakes, ice cream, these are combination of sugar and fats, and sila nga yung mga pinaka-numero unong mga common foods na kinakain ng mga taong merong gallbladder problem. So, if you wish to know more about this, I know it may sound overwhelming, especially if bago pa lang kayo in low carb and fasting journey. But if you wish to know more and if you wish to be guided, because iba-iba po yung protocol, hindi ibig sabihin na na alam na natin na yung pagkain ng taba ay hindi masama, mag-unlimited samgyupsal na tayo everyday, or di kaya ay kakain na lang tayo basta-basta, even if we already have fatty liver, even if we already have cholesterol stone in our bile, in our gallbladder. We want you to do it the safe way. So I suggest you consult your trusted physician, work with your doctor, or you can also consult with the low carb doctors in our community. And if you wish to know more, if you want to have a structured knowledge, meron kaming masterclass for these diseases, the fatty liver, gallbladder stones, and also dyslipidemia o pagkakaroon ng mga bad cholesterol sa ating katawan, and how to naturally lower it down to normal by only altering your food intake. Namely, kung ano yung kakainin natin at anong oras tayo dapat kumain for better health. So, yan lang muna for now. Maraming salamat, everyone. Those are the 3 things na maling bintang sa pagkain ng taba: the bad cholesterol, the fatty liver, and the gallbladder diseases. And I hope you educate yourself more and be a part of our community, Life Without Rice and Low Carb Feasting and Fasting community for more. And you can also follow our Facebook page. Kahit pa nakahack pa rin yung ating Facebook page, please continue to pray na mabawi na natin yung ating admin access in our Facebook page. And also, thank you for always subscribing in our YouTube for more low carb and fasting info. So, this is your Diet Clara, Dr. Josephine Grace Chua Rojo, and always remember to stay low carb so that we all stay safe. Maraming salamat po. Ako ay magtatrabaho na. Maraming salamat. Bye, everyone!